In a recent press conference, newly inaugurated U.S. President Donald Trump reignited a contentious topic by expressing his desire to see Canada become the 51st state of the United States. This statement, made on a Friday, was accompanied by claims that Canadians would benefit significantly from such a merger, including a tremendous tax cut and much better health coverage. Trump's remarks also featured his familiar criticism of Canadian trade practices, asserting that Canada has been very nasty to the U.S. in trade dealings, costing his country an estimated $200 billion annually. Understanding the context of Trump's comments. To fully appreciate the implications of Trump's proposal, it is essential to consider the context in which he made these remarks. The idea of Canada becoming the 51st state is not new. It has surfaced intermittently in political discourse, often as a tongue-in-cheek suggestion rather than a serious proposal. However, Trump's persistent focus on the topic raises questions about his intentions and the potential ramifications for U.S.-Canada relations. 1. Historical background. The notion of Canada merging with the United States has a historical precedent. During the 19th century, there were discussions about Canadian Confederation and the possibility of joining the U.S. However, these discussions have largely faded over time, as Canada developed its distinct national identity and social policies. 2. Trump's administration and nationalism. Trump's presidency has been characterized by a strong emphasis on nationalism and protectionism. His comments about Canada reflect a broader narrative in which he seeks to redefine international relationships based on perceived fairness and economic advantage. This context is crucial for understanding why Trump would propose such an idea. 3. Trade tensions. Trump's assertion that Canada has been detrimental to the U.S. economy stems from ongoing trade tensions between the two nations. His claims about trade deficits and unfair practices have fueled a narrative of competition rather than collaboration. This backdrop sets the stage for his provocative remarks about Canada becoming a U.S. state. The benefits Trump claims for Canada. In an attempt to persuade Canadians of the merits of joining the United States, Trump highlighted several potential benefits. 1. Tax cuts. One of Trump's primary arguments for a merger is the promise of tremendous tax cuts. He suggested that Canadians would experience lower taxes under a U.S. framework. However, the reality of tax policy is complex, and the impact of such changes would depend on various factors, including income levels, regional differences, and how tax revenues are allocated. 2. Health coverage. Trump also claimed that Canadians would receive much better health coverage by merging with the U.S. This assertion raises significant questions, particularly regarding the differences between the Canadian and American healthcare systems. Canada's publicly funded healthcare system is fundamentally different from the predominantly private system in the U.S. The implications of such a shift would need careful examination, as it could lead to both positive and negative outcomes for Canadians. 3. Security and stability. By framing the merger as a means to enhance security, particularly against perceived threats from Russia and China, Trump aims to alleviate concerns about national defense. He suggested that being part of the U.S. would provide Canada with a stronger security framework. However, the complexities of defense policy and international relations necessitate a nuanced understanding that goes beyond simplistic assertions. Analyzing Trump's beliefs. Genuine or political posturing? The question arises, does Trump genuinely believe that Canada could become a U.S. state? Or is this simply another example of his characteristic bravado? To explore this question, it is helpful to consider Trump's history of political rhetoric and his approach to international relations. 1. Trump's communication style. Trump is known for his unfiltered communication style, often making bold statements that capture media attention. His remarks about Canada may be more about generating headlines than proposing a serious political agenda. This style has characterized his presidency, where sensationalism often takes precedence over substantive policy discussions. 2. Political strategy. By promoting the idea of Canada as the 51st state, Trump may be attempting to solidify his base among nationalist and protectionist supporters. This strategy plays into a narrative of America first, appealing to those who believe in prioritizing U.S. interests over international collaborations. 3. Public reaction and dialogue. The reaction to Trump's comments has been mixed, with many Canadians expressing outrage or disbelief. Former Ontario Premier Kathleen Wynne, for instance, offered insights into the implications of such statements during an interview on the Inside the Village podcast. Her perspective reflects a broader sentiment among Canadians who view Trump's remarks as an affront to their national identity. Kathleen Wynne's perspective. In a recent interview on the Inside the Village podcast, former Ontario Premier Kathleen Wynne addressed Trump's proposal and its implications for Canada. Wynne's insights provide a nuanced understanding of the potential consequences of such rhetoric. 1. The importance of national identity. Wynne emphasized that Canada has cultivated a unique national identity that is distinct from the United States. The idea of becoming a U.S. state undermines the values and principles that Canadians hold dear. She articulated the importance of respecting Canadian sovereignty and the need to prioritize the interests of Canadians in political discourse. 2. Economic considerations. Wynne also highlighted the economic implications of Trump's comments. While Trump touts the potential benefits of tax cuts and improved health coverage, the reality is that economic integration is far more complex. Wynne pointed out that Canadians value their social safety nets, and any shift toward a U.S.-style system could lead to negative consequences for vulnerable populations. 3. The role of leadership. Wynne discussed the importance of strong leadership in navigating the challenges posed by Trump's rhetoric. She stressed the need for Canadian leaders to engage in constructive dialogue and assert Canada's interests on the global stage. This approach would help mitigate the risks associated with provocative statements and reinforce Canada's commitment to its values. The historical context of U.S.-Canada relations. To understand the implications of Trump's proposal, it is essential to examine the historical relationship between Canada and the United States. This relationship has evolved over time, shaped by shared interests and occasional tensions. 1. Historical cooperation. The U.S. and Canada have long enjoyed a cooperative relationship, characterized by trade agreements, cultural exchange, and mutual defense initiatives. The establishment of the Canada-U.S. Free Trade Agreement, CUFTA, and the subsequent North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, exemplified the commitment to fostering economic ties while respecting national sovereignty. 2. Moments of tension. Despite the overall cooperative relationship, tensions have occasionally emerged. Issues such as trade disputes, border security, and differing political ideologies have tested the strength of the partnership. Trump's comments about merging the two nations tapped into these historical tensions, reigniting discussions about sovereignty and national identity. 3. Cultural connections and divergences. Canada and the U.S. share cultural connections, but they also have distinct identities. Canadians often pride themselves on their commitment to multiculturalism, social justice, and universal healthcare. These values shape the national identity and influence public sentiment regarding any proposal for merging with the U.S. The future of U.S.-Canada relations. As discussions surrounding Trump's proposal continue, it is essential to consider the future of U.S.-Canada relations. The trajectory of this relationship will be influenced by political developments, public sentiment, and the evolving global landscape. 1. Navigating political changes. The political landscape in both countries is dynamic, with shifting priorities and leadership changes. The outcome of future elections and policy decisions will shape the direction of U.S.-Canada relations, requiring a delicate balance between cooperation and respect for sovereignty. 2. Strengthening economic ties. Regardless of the political climate, strengthening economic ties between the two nations remains imperative. Trade agreements, cross-border investments, and collaboration on key industries can create opportunities for growth while respecting the independence of both countries. 3. Fostering cultural exchange. Promoting cultural exchange and understanding between Canadians and Americans can help bridge divides and foster goodwill. Initiatives that encourage dialogue, collaboration, and shared experiences can strengthen the bonds between the two nations. 4. Addressing global challenges. The U.S. and Canada face a range of global challenges, including climate change, security threats, and economic instability. Collaborating on these pressing issues can enhance cooperation and reinforce the importance of maintaining a strong partnership. The broader implications of Trump's proposal. Trump's suggestion that Canada could become the 51st state carries broader implications for the relationship between the two nations and the political landscape in North America. 1. Impact on Canadian sovereignty. The idea of merging with the U.S. raises significant concerns about Canadian sovereignty. Many Canadians view their country as an independent nation with its own values and priorities. The prospect of losing that sovereignty in favor of becoming a U.S. state is a troubling notion for many. 2. Public sentiment and national pride. Public sentiment in Canada regarding Trump's proposal is largely negative. Many Canadians take pride in their national identity and independence, viewing the idea of merging with the U.S. as a threat to their cultural heritage and values. The proposal is perceived as an attempt to undermine Canada's autonomy and distinctiveness on the world stage. 3. Potential for political backlash. Trump's comments could provoke a political backlash in Canada, with leaders and citizens rallying against the notion of merging with the U.S. This backlash could manifest in increased support for progressive policies that emphasize Canadian identity and values, further reinforcing the divide between the two nations. 4. Challenges of integration. Should the idea gain traction, the challenges of integrating the two nations would be immense. Differences in governance, social policies, and cultural values would require extensive negotiation and compromise. The complexities of such a merger would likely lead to significant resistance from both sides. Conclusion. Donald Trump's recent comments about Canada becoming the 51st state have sparked a renewed debate about national identity, sovereignty, and the future of U.S.-Canada relations. While his assertions of potential benefits may resonate with some, the complexities of such a proposal cannot be overlooked. Former Ontario Premier Kathleen Wynne's insights highlight the importance of respecting Canadian sovereignty and the need for constructive dialogue in navigating the challenges posed by provocative statements. The historical context of U.S.-Canada relations underscores the need to prioritize cooperation while maintaining distinct national identities. As the conversation surrounding Trump's proposal continues, it is crucial for both nations to engage in thoughtful discussions that reflect their shared values and aspirations. The future of U.S.-Canada relations will depend on navigating these complexities while fostering understanding, collaboration, and mutual respect. Ultimately, the enduring ties between the two nations will continue to shape the North American landscape, reflecting the diverse identities and aspirations of their people.